Hi, Rob. It's Phil from Cyclefit here. I've got Jules on the line also. Grateful for your time here. If we can ask you a few questions about the project that we've got designed with each other, called the Project Overland. Can you give us a bit of information about that, please, Rob?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you both for taking the time to go over this. Yeah, it's a project we've been working on for a while, and I've introduced it a little earlier than originally intended, given current world situation. But we're super excited about it. It's good to work on exciting projects in trying times. It helps as a distraction for all of us, and to think about riding when you're able to. So the project is called Overland. It's a new model that Seven is introducing right now, that you'll be able to find out a lot online. There's dozens of new features and innovations to this bike. So it's hard to crunch that all down into a couple minutes, but we're going to do our best to do that. So the bike is an evolution, kind of a disruption internally is what we're calling it. A disruption of the gravel segment that we've been involved since before it was called gravel, with the Evergreen line of bikes that we do that have been really successful and really exciting. The Overland is the next step in that in a bunch of different ways. And the overarching way that we discuss it in-house is the idea of capability, that it's a super capable bike with a lot of additional features. So from a capability standpoint, the Overland is a dual wheel bike. So it's a 650 and 700C, optimized for both. There's certain tire sizes in each system, but tire clearance, chainring clearance, still really tight handling, tight performing, agile bike with two wheel sizes. So that's part of that capability and versatility of the bike. We've also worked with Cyclefit on the fit and function of the way the rider sits on the bike. Cyclefit bringing 20+ years of fitting experience, more than 10,000 fits on the work they do, plus Seven's 35,000 fit projects, design projects. So combining, bringing, we think, more horsepower of design and fit capability than any other project maybe ever in the bike world. So that's creating a fit like nothing else we've seen, combined with a bunch of other elements. So that's part of the capability: fit, dual wheel size, some tube set things we're doing with the bike. From there, the next big element of the bike is the way we're creating a more efficient drivetrain, a stiffer drivetrain. It's about a little over 2 times stiffer than the typical Evergreen drivetrain. So we're maximizing watts inputs into the frame coming out the rear wheel. That's through some new tube technology, some new tube butting work that we're doing, and just new tube sourcing that we've been doing. So we're very excited about that piece of it. We're also, the look of the bike is very different too. We're doing internal cable routing, housing on the bike in a very different way than we've seen in the industry previously. So it's very sleek, no external mounts or cable stops or anything like that, zip guides and all that kind of stuff. And then super durable, as with everything that Seven does, making bikes for a lifetime, and we mean it, and we have a warranty for that. And this bike is going to be able to put up with anything you do, no matter what you do with the bike. It can take just about anything. And the term Overland is to evoke the idea of it can go anywhere overland, from performance road riding to really unexplored primitive trail riding, almost mountain bike with a drop bar sort of riding with that 650 wheel. And then the sweet spot, the bell curve, is gravel riding and all the elements of that, from fast gravel riding to pretty rough class 4 roads, or what we call in the States class 4 roads, are pretty uncared for roads, but good stuff to explore. So that's the overarching design of the Overland that Cyclefit is getting a preview of. We're not offering it to the public yet. It's just for this specific project we've put together with Cyclefit. So you guys have a little bit of a head start on the rest of the world on access to that bike. And then with Cyclefit, we've added a bunch of features and elements that are only for this project. So while it's an Overland bike that's new, there's a bunch of additional things. But maybe the most important one is the way in which we're working with the fit capability and background and knowledge that Cyclefit has with Seven's design background and supportive fit knowledge from the work we've done to create a very quick full custom bike in terms of delivery. So 4-week lead time, which is really pretty unheard of for what this bike is allowing a rider to do in a full custom format with Cyclefit's capabilities of fitting. That's a whole new thing. So we can get you on a bike when you need a bike in these times, really quicker than ever on a more advanced technology bike than we've ever produced. Some of the other things are the team that's the frame building team that's putting each of these limited edition bikes together for Cyclefit is really one of our most capable frame building teams. The primary frame builder is Dan Cariolo. He's been with us for nearly a decade, built more than 3,000 frames, custom frames. So for somebody, you've probably never heard his name, but he has more experience than most builders, solo builders in the world. So an amazing frame builder. I could talk a lot more about him, but it's super important. Next, the welder, Steph Adams. She's welded, I think it's about 15,000 titanium bikes in her life for over 20 years. There's nobody with more experience and better welder in the world than Steph on a titanium bike. And then last and equal is John Tomine. He also a master frame builder here. He's taking care of all the post-welding work, which is a long string of things, but it has everything to do with the alignment of the frame, how it rides. You know, it has to be super straight to ride well. That's one of the hidden features of a 7 is how straight they are. That helps the ride quality, ride characteristics of the bikes. So he's taking care of all that, all the post-machining of post-welding machining, and all the finish work, so that what you see on the bike when it's finished is what John is doing in this case. So an amazing, more than 40 years experience between them all of frame building. So you're getting a ridiculously deep frame building experience with each of these bikes. That combined with Cyclefit's experience is I think unheard of ever in the past. So amazing, amazing stuff. And then one more thing I'll mention is in the time of the COVID-19, Cyclefit is donating some funds to a cause, and 7 is matching that to a local cause for us. So Cyclefit in London area and 7 in the Boston area. So for each bike that's sold, there are funds going to support people at risk and the people that are taking care of us all that are also at high risk. So those are just a few of the things. I got to stop talking because it could go on and on.
One of the really exciting things about the Overlander is that we're using this XX tubing technology, which is pretty new. Can you explain to us a little bit about the XX technology, please?
Yeah, for sure. We introduced the XX tube set a little over 2 years ago now. Feels like a lifetime, but it was an entirely new way of shaving grams off every tube in the frame, including the head tube and the bottom bracket. Taking what we did with our SLX program and just pushing it as far as we humanly could, sort of cost no object in that project. So that's mostly done through tube budding, where we're shaving every gram. There's the thick section. Sorry, let me show and tell here. So this is a typical, say, top tube. The end of the tube is thicker. So head tube end, bottom bracket end, C tube end. Head tube end is thicker, C tube end is thicker, and then it's thinner within the center of the tube. Because we're doing internal routing, we don't have to worry about any reinforcements in the midsection of the tube for cable stops or anything. So that enhances its durability just from a design standpoint. And then the two ends being butted, they're butted differently and much shorter than a typical butt. So we save roughly on average about an ounce to ounce and a half, 30 to 45 grams per tube, which over the entire frame is significant. It doesn't affect the ride quality because we're doing that through tube budding in different ways or tube profile in different ways. So just shaving literally every gram. If we can shave a centimeter I can't do the math in my head, but a centimeter of butt is going to save a few grams. So every half centimeter, we're looking at, can we shade that on this frame, on a specific frame? And every frame, the tube set is made from scratch, from the ground up. So there's no preformed tubes. This is actually a tube that's in production for a rider right now. It's been budded for that rider. There will never be another tube that we make exactly like this. So everyone is different, particularly for the XX, because we're pushing that as far as we can. Another thing with the Overland tube set is we're doing a lot of oversized work. So this is an example of typical tubes, like sort of standard evergreen tube. And standard is a stretch because every bike is different, but this is a pretty common tube size. This is an example of some of what we're using with the Overland project. So we're not making the bikes stiff and harsh. We're focused on drivetrain rigidity. Some of that is down tube stiffness. Some of that is bottom bracket. Some of that is chainstay design. So we're using significantly oversized chainstays for that system. And here's.
Can I just ask you a quick question, Rob?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you about when you do that button for the rider, that's based on the ride quality and you use their weight and some other feedback from the rider, don't you, to change that?
Yeah. Yes, there's probably 30 factors that go into the tube set decisions. The rider weight is a key aspect for, I think, obvious reasons. The difference between somebody who's 150 pounds and 200 pounds, that's a 25% weight difference, or a third, depending on how you do calculations. That is a huge difference. So that's one of them. Another is the horsepower that somebody puts out. And there's various ways we kind of get at that through discussion. So horsepower, the rider's age, because that affects horsepower. The way they're going to use the bike. Are you using this Overland for some bike packing stuff? Are you loading a frame bag? Are you doing a handlebar bag? All that stuff goes into factoring where the tubing needs to be stiff and compliant. The parts kit that you're going to put on the bike, the fork you're going to use, the wheel set you're using, all this stuff impacts the way we're thinking about the tube set to make it function as optimally for all those factors that go into the way you're riding the bike. So the list is long. Yeah.
Thank you.
So the more information we have, the more that Cyclefit, that's why Cyclefit asks all those questions during the interview process or during the conversations that you have, is all that stuff really does matter. Even the old bike, the bike that you're coming from as your reference point as a rider, that's really helpful for us to know what does stiff mean to you relative to the bike you have. Because everything is relative. Like, we have our objective measures, but it doesn't matter if that doesn't match to your rider's previous experience and whatever bike that is, whether that's a steel bike from the mid 80s or a super contemporary carbon bike. When that rider says, I want the bike stiffer or plusher than that bike, those are two totally different experiences. So having that information helps us with a reference point. We're not going to repeat what they have before, but that is a jumping off point for making it better. So one of the features of the tube set, it's hard to see on video, but this is the drop stay with a 1-inch diameter. You can see how there's nothing straight through the whole system. That oversized stay makes the chainstay itself 2 times stiffer before we start doing any tube manipulation or tube butting or modification. So then we can make it lighter and stiffer still because of the diameter. The drop stay allows us to give more tire clearance, more chainring clearance, shorter rear end of the bike. So a lot of nuanced improvements in the ride characteristic. One of the other important aspects is our new internal cable routing, which is pretty unique in how we're applying that to a metal bike. This is one example in process. It doesn't look like much, which is a good thing. And there's some final machining that happens after the fact, after welding. This is an internal port that goes through and into the down tube. So most of what's happening with this design is inside the down tube. So the head tube is different than we've ever done before. It's a bunch of machining elements to that. And then the way the down tube interfaces with the port and the head tube is different. And then the bottom bracket, I'm not actually going to show you the inside because that's proprietary right now. The way we're routing everything through the bottom bracket shell makes it easy for a mechanic, easy to maintain, reduces service work that's needed on the frame, and then the way the ports come out of the rear end of the bike too. Not going to show you those right now. Also different than anything we've seen before. And that's all of that work is to make sure that we have a lifetime service bike that's going to last forever. We do a lot of fatigue testing here. We break everything we can figure out how to break, see how it fails, and then make improvements so that we don't build something that can fail. And internal cable routing, one of the reasons we've never done it previously is ongoing issues that we've seen with internal routing. We did internal routing back 30 plus years ago when I was with Merlin. We had an internal routing bike, and every one of those, well, not everyone, most of those bikes had problems. And what we see today out in the field is really the same system from back then. So we did not want to replicate the past. So we've worked on a new system that we've tested for over a year now, and really excited about that we can now offer it. So Cyclefit is seeing the first of the Overland internal routing option. So
fantastic, very good.